Sir Rick here, reminding you to tune in to our new segment called The Sledgehammer, featuring those who make a legal difference in our industry.
All right, we are back with Sir Rick in the pretty hat, and we're here. We are joined today with the unbelievably highly recognized David Heller, Senior Vice President of Governmental Affairs out at Truckload Carriers Association. How you doing, David?
I'm doing well. I just wish I was on the NFL part of the conversation, talking about Cooper Rush and his 4-0 record as a starter for the Cowboys.
Not bad. We'll take that all day as a backup, right? You can't get worse than that.
Especially against the Commanders. Go Cowboys.
Yeah,
I still
we'll
can't
apply
get used
that.
to that name. You know what? That's a tough name for me to get used to, the Commanders. But
I can't get used to it either, so I'm lucky I got it right this time.
All right,
yeah. Let me go. Hey, so David, we big, topics that we continue to talk to folks on this station about. We hear it throughout the industry, especially when you talk to the truck drivers, is parking. I mean, give me some good news. I mean, is it there? Is it open? Do we have parking all over the place?
If that were the case, right, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. You wish it were, but I can say there's good news to report or positive strides that are happening in this realm, if you will. First and foremost, we were able to get language in appropriations basically highlighting the problem in the House Appropriations Bill, which was step number one. Step number two is getting those dollars flowing, and those dollars are in the process of flowing. You're starting to see a lot of news out there of these grants that are getting issued to improve the truck parking initiatives that are going on out there. So this is a bipartisan issue, without a doubt. It's something that everybody can seemingly get behind. It's one of those conversations that are easy to have on the Hill because you walk out of it feeling good, and everybody knows this is a problem that needs to be fixed. Now, how do you need to fix it? You need dollars, and that's the long and short of it. And dollars created helps form these new parking spots or new lots, if you will, in the places that we actually need them along the major freight corridors across the country. So that's really what's going on, is the quest for actually finding dollars. There's a bill out there that was introduced. It's about 755 or 775 million over 4 years that is being talked about. And it's a good bill put forward by Congressman Bost, who is a truck driver and owns a trucking company. And he put this bill out there because he recognizes the need for it. And I think everybody can get behind the fact that we need safe and secure truck parking for our nation's driving army.
Yeah, and David, as we're talking about it, I understand it's a lot easier said than done out there to get money, but I'll tell you what, just from talking to truck drivers and having been one, it's really the metropolitan areas that you go in and that you feed to find these much needed areas. Out there on the open road, you typically can find it, but we deliver and we pick up in these heavy metropolitan areas. I think that's the huge challenge, right? To get these dollars to buy those much needed spaces.
Well, yeah, and the reality is you look at the East Coast and West Coast, you look at I-95 and I-5 or 87, and then you look at Chicago. Those are the big hitters in terms of truck parking. If there's a problem, you're going to find it in those places. So that's really what we're talking about. So getting dollars to find land, buy land, grow land, or make land usable for truck parking becomes the real issue. And a lot of states right now have discretionary funds that were given to them through the infrastructure program. However, the big difference is those discretionary dollars didn't go as far as they did last year because we've got inflation. Certainly the cost of construction has gone up tremendously. So you're looking at roads, bridges, truck parking, and they all fall under that same umbrella or that same formula. So those dollars have to be spread across the three. So it becomes a question of exactly how much is truck parking going to get, especially when we need roads and bridges as well.
Hey, so David, on that truck parking, let's just pretend that tomorrow all the cash is available. There's still a lot of work to do yet, right? We still have to go out and do the studies and find the land. Have the studies even been done yet, or does that happen after the cash is available?
Well, and that's a great question. And I think half of it is still, there is some studies being done, or truck parking or lack thereof is not a new problem. This is one that's been around for a long time. And certainly in some cases, there have been studies done that have availability for paving a lot, if you will, or making services available for drivers on the road. So it's a process, if you will. Some are well ahead of the game, some are not so much. So it just becomes a question of where is this located and what part of the country is it located, how far along in the process have they gotten to, and what's next.
Yeah, there's been genuine conversations up on the Hill. It seems like their conversations are being had. I just wish it would make the floor or get out of committee or at least get in there so that we can get something done, because this is almost frustrating to a degree of where everybody knows there's a problem. Everybody's talked about the problem. We've talked about it. Many people have brought it up in both in the houses and in subcommittee, but it's never really making its way to the floor in order to get voted on. I mean, what are we going to do and how are we going to get it done?
And that's a great question, because nothing in government ever really moves quickly per se. It all goes at a snail's pace at best. And then, today's Congress, usually things like this get attached to something much larger. And here we are, we're, pretty much the congressional session is over with. Now it's midterm elections. So you're almost waiting till year end or lame duck session before anything gets taken up, if it gets taken up at all, which then puts us into the following year where this conversation has to happen all over again. So it's one of those interesting things. You're right. It does not move quickly whatsoever. And you hope times like this, with the nature as emergent as the need for safe and secure truck parking, would move a lot quicker. And it's just not moving at the speed in which you, myself, or anybody else involved in the trucking industry wants it to move at.
Yeah. Switch it gear just a little bit, and it probably won't take long. AB5, any movement on it? I mean, we saw Universal Logistics come in and unionize a group of their independent contractors. I haven't seen much other movement other than that. Is there any new anything happening? Any steps to say it's going to happen or it's not going to happen, or is it still just kind of hanging out there waiting for somebody to make a decision on, I guess?
Well, the injunction's been lifted, so it's not a question of when or how or if it'll happen. It is happening, but it's not a quick pace, because enforcement actions aren't one that happen at the roadside. It's enforcement actions that will happen in terms of investigations, probably litigation. So it's going to take some time till we see how all this shakes out. Certainly the carriers are planning and have their plans in place on how they adjust for AB5 and what comes next. And we're obviously paying attention to the states that could, for lack of a better term, fall in regard to California. So you're looking at Washington, Oregon, and then on the East Coast, Massachusetts, New Jersey, some of these East Coast states. So traditionally, once one state falls, others start getting in line. So we're trying to see how this shakes out. And 70,000 independent contractors in the state of California, it's not a small number. So it's going to shake out one way or another. But carriers are putting in different practices all across the board, practices that are best for their own fleet, whether it's making these independent contractors their own employees. But doing that basically eliminates the need that they started an independent contractor business in the first place. So, there's a lot of different practices that are going on in the industry today when it comes to AB5. People are preparing all across the board and how this could shake out and if there is enforcement action against them. So it's one of those things at this point now, it's a wait and see.
Yeah, so I guess, that becomes the question now, right? Is that enforcement just nothing? I haven't heard, again, so on that enforcement area, is there any rumors? Are you hearing anything from carriers, from legislation on, hey, it's going to happen January, February? I know they can go back, but when are they really going to start that enforcement? Is it really clearly no idea right now?
I haven't heard a single peep on that. So at this point in time, your guess is as good, if not better than mine. So it's one of those, we're really kind of wait and see. And we don't know what the next step, we don't know how this is going to shake out. We haven't heard any stories or, hey, here's an investigation that's going on. None of these things have actually happened. And it's been abnormally quiet under something that is so impactful.
So, and just so that I'm clear, David, and I understand, this also opens up the possibility for this to be retroactive, right? They can go back over time, even if they start to enforce it in, let's just say, March. They can turn around and go back over time and go get like money in arrears. Am I not mistaken on that?
Well, yeah, I would imagine. And again, I'd have to put my legal hat on, which doesn't really exist. But I would imagine they can go back to the point where the injunction has been lifted. So they can't go back until it was actually when it was put in place. But they have to go back probably to when the injunction was lifted, which happened a few weeks ago.
All right.
Yes, I agree with you on that. I think this is, David, the exact opposite of like what Cher, if I could turn back time, they will turn back time. I can assure you on that.
They're not going to leave money on the table if that money is to be had.
Yeah, that's for sure. Hey, let's move it over to the other coast now. We had just a major storm, hurricane that hit Florida, moved up the coast up to the Carolinas as well, and Georgia. Dave, I want to first talk about number one, wow, just crazy destruction, and our hearts, prayers go out to. But I also want to make sure we take time to recognize and understand that everybody sees who is the ones bringing in this, the relief goods, all the generators, the food, the water. This trucking industry once again, really shows who we are when this country needs us at the most.
Oh, rest assured, the state of Florida can relax, because all the things they need to rescue and rebuild, it's going to be on a truck. There's no doubt about it. It's coming in by truck, and that trucking army is rolling as we speak with goods that state needs to rebuild and get itself back on its feet. We'll play an integral part in that, no doubt about it.
So, and I'm just curious, and just so everybody's aware, when FEMA reacts and they start to move goods and services, it's all on trucks. There's not federal truck drivers out there running federal trucks, moving federal goods. It's actually our trucking. It's our truck drivers in the United States actually moving those goods and services over their trucks to get in there in cooperation with FEMA, correct?
Oh, it'll be on government contracted freight carriers, if you will. It's not big. The federal government doesn't have this massive fleet of trucks and trailers and whatnot. No, it's on truckload carriers and LTL carriers that are all driving that stuff right down to Florida as we speak. Last time I heard, there's a massive convoy of stuff that is heading down to that west coast of Florida to make sure the population there are taken care of and they have everything they need.
Yes, sir. And along that same side is that, again, to the drivers out there, we want to make sure that you hear it from us here at BCB Live, from all the trucking, the Truckload Carriers Association, from David and that group is, man, we are so thankful because we couldn't do it. This country couldn't do it without you. And you know what? It's also our time to recognize that even during this time right here, when times get chaotic, is that we really got to stop back, slow down for a minute, and make sure we're focusing on safety. David, I know that you know this, but when this world gets crazy like this, when chaos happens, oftentimes we start to, we take it personal. Maybe because hours of service have been lifted, that we feel like we can drive further than we should, even going into Florida to helping people. First and foremost, I think all of us on this show here want to remind you that safety does come first. I don't care how many hours you have. If you're worn out, if you're just tired, if something's going on, you've got to get off that road, even in Florida, where you have an open logbook right now as they're not checking out everything right now. So just a reminder to each and every one of you to always make sure that, number one, hey, safety does come first.
Hey.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And if you look at it this way, right, if the load doesn't get there because there's an accident that happens, then it's not doing any good in the first place. And in the industry, we always recognize the professional truck drivers as the captain of the ship. They're the ones that are making the decisions first and foremost on how to proceed. So drivers, regardless of how you're hauling, make sure you're well rested and able to operate that vehicle, because the load is desperately needed of what you're hauling. Whether it's generators, first aid, you name it, it's clothing, building supplies, things of that nature, things to rebuild or continue the rescue efforts. There's a reason you're bringing that load to where it's going in the state of Florida. And whether you have a open logbook or not, you're the captain of that ship, and that load needs to be there. And that's first and foremost. So operating safely is priority number one.